it's time for you to tell us what happened the night Teri Jo died.
The baffling murder of a teenage girl.
There's what you think, there's what you know, and there's what you can prove.
An unsolved case that haunts detectives.
But it was personal and has been personal for a long time.
Decades later, police get one last chance to bring a killer to justice.
There's a lot of evil in there.
And here I am just about ready to retire, and I'm sure, this is always kind of bothering me.
Every question turns up the heat.
The thing of it is, I can keep talking here too. You guys are saying you got me home.
He was gonna go off. He was getting so mad. I don't get paid to get mad. I get paid to get confessions.
In the interrogation room, police must confront evil.
When did you decide that you were going to kill this person?
Why did you choose murder?
Do you think of yourself as a serial killer?
Sifting through unspeakable crimes and dark secrets.
I had a knife and went down.
I am a killer. I've killed 3 other people.
The truth can only be revealed when evil talks.
There's rolling hills, and then you hit the mountains.
Small town feel, more cows than people. People left their doors open at night. You didn't worry about your kids playing out at night in the dark. You knew where everyone was.
There's not a lot of homicides in the county.
September 29th, 1985. The small town of Lander, Wyoming, is shocked by the discovery of a body alongside a rural road. Detective Bill Lassiter gets the call to be lead investigator.
The captain called me and said, "Hey, we got a homicide out here." The body was found right alongside the road, totally nude. She didn't look like an adult, but yet she didn't look like a child, somewhere in between.
Also called to the scene is Detective Bill Braddock. It's his first homicide case.
As I arrived at the crime scene, the other investigators were already on scene. Investigator Laster was the lead investigator, but he's just wondering what I'm actually going to see and just how bad it might be. We could see she had numerous abrasions, scratches on the front of her body, clear up to her forehead. There was no obvious signs of trauma, such as a knife wound or gunshot.
Detective Braddock, you have a call.
And it was within a very short time we were advised by the dispatch of the sheriff's office via radio that there had been a runaway teenage girl reported the evening before.
Copy. Any details?
The runaway was from the group home in Lander. She was reported missing about between 8 and 9 o'clock the evening before we found the body.
Copy. Tell them a detective's going to be in touch with them, and if they have any other information, give me a call back, okay?
We got the name from the group home. She was identified as Teresa Joanne Bradish.
Police wonder if the runaway girl could be their victim.
Their father, Jerry Bradish, showed up at the funeral. And he said he heard and found a body. And he said, "Can I look at her, see if it's my daughter?" So we cleaned her face up a little bit and covered her and We let him in the room to look at her, said it was her.
As a father of young children, I was sympathizing with this man because he was really crying and upset.
Yes. That's my daughter.
I thought, how bad could it be to find your child that way?
Teri Jo, as she was known, had been living in the group home for 5 months. After her parents divorced, her father had won custody, but he found the 13-year-old difficult to manage.
She was running away constantly. And finally, her parents had had enough. They took her into juvenile court, and the juvenile court put her in the group home.
Teri Jo's cousin, Kisa, is shocked by the murder. The two girls were just a year apart and had been close from an early age.
We spent the night at each other's houses, and we would sleep over in her little playhouse that her dad had built and put together. I do remember him making sure that before we went to sleep, then we were not going to be sneaking around. Well, this is another picture of us all together. I was probably about 11 here, maybe. It's probably one of the times that we were all together. Just so full of life, so much energy around her. She was a light. So I said my hope was just that they would, solve it. Who would do such a thing? Who hated her so much that they would do something like that to her?
The day after Teri Jo's body is found, an autopsy reveals a brutal crime.
The autopsy determined that the cause of death was strangulation.
It also looks like they found alcohol in her system.
Sometime prior to her death, she had consumed an alcoholic beverage. They did a sexual assault kit. There were signs of sexual activity, if you will, in the presence of semen and sperm.
Police realize they are searching for someone capable of sexually assaulting and murdering a 13-year-old girl. Investigators began to retrace Teri Jo's final steps.
We went to the group home and we interviewed all of the kids there, and we interviewed some kids that had been there, that had just left.
Detectives learned that Teri Jo's last evening on Earth began as an ordinary Saturday night.
The night before, it was movie night at the Lander group home, and they were all downstairs watching a movie, all the kids.
Hello?
The other residents at the home say Teri Jo received a phone call.
You got a phone call? Hello?
After talking on the phone for a bit, she advised the group parent that her father had called and he was coming to see her the next day. And she was really excited, to the point where she really didn't want to sit down and watch the movie anymore. So she asked if she could go outside.
Could I go out and get some air? Sure, just be quick. It's cold out there.
About 15, 20 minutes later, she hadn't showed up. So the kids and her shift supervisor at the group home went outside, and the only thing that they saw was a car heading down through the woods. They couldn't really give a description of it. But they never found Teri Jo that night. Well, the next morning we did.
Investigators asked Teri Jo's father, Jerry Bradish, about the phone call his daughter received the night she slipped away.
He denied making the call. He didn't know anything about it.
Investigators suspect Teri Jo was trying to hide a date.
If she'd have said her father, the group home parent would have been somewhat understanding. If she'd have mentioned some young boy's name who was going to come to pick her up or something, see her, that would have been a kind of a red flag.
Who lured her out of the group home that night? Investigators interview everyone who knew Teri Jo. No one admits to calling or seeing her the night she left the group home.
We don't know. We talked to everybody. Her father, every single one of the folks there at the group home, teachers to school, staff, etc. Just nothing.
Detectives are puzzled, but struck by the similarities to another unsolved case. A young waitress murdered 19 months earlier.
We found her body on Muskrat Road, nude, buried, and strangled.
Is it possible that Teri Jo was kidnapped and murdered by the same killer?
We compared the description. It looked like it might be possible. The age was real close. Thought maybe we had a serial killer or something.
Because at that time being, there was some other incidents going around the state, you know. There had been a young girl found in the trash can or something like that.
Kind of remember that. What do you understand happened to her?
As I was explained, that they found her on the road. She was nude, and they told me that she had sexual intercourse, had some alcohol too, that they found in her, and she had been strangled.
I had a hard time sleeping. I dreamt of her a lot. And I couldn't go to sleep at night because all I would see would be her. She would just be telling me to help her, or that she was alone and she was scared.
Police are searching for the killer of 13-year-old Teri Jo Bradish. They wonder if she could have been murdered by the killer of a young waitress a year and a half earlier.
She'd been sexually assaulted. She'd been strangled. She was nude. They were about the same height, same weight. We didn't know whether they had a serial killer.
Detectives have a suspect for the first murder, an employee from the diner where the slain waitress also worked. But he has a solid alibi for the night of Teri Jo's murder.
He was out of the area when Teri Jo died. No relation. No way to connect.
Let's do it.
Anybody and everybody we could talk to and try and get information about her was interviewed for the next 3 or 4 months because we were never able to come up with a suspect that we could develop any evidence or proof against.
The investigation, it just seemed like it was going nowhere. You know, we were just nowhere. And it was so frustrating.
All right, well, if you do find anything out, please give me a call.
Weeks turn into months with no progress.
Unfortunately, eventually, case went cold. So the other junior investigator and I were basically taken from this case, and we went back to handling the normal call load.
But the unanswered questions around Teri Jo's death linger, and Detective Lassiter obsesses over the case.
My family suffered from this. I'm sure they did. because I worked so hard at it. I became involved in it. And I tried to explain it to them. And they've all forgiven me. But I don't know.
After years with no break in the case, Detective Lassiter eventually retires, but he stays in touch with Detective Braddock.
Well, every time I talk to Bill, I'd say, hey, anything on the Bradish yet? Nothing. And I think, man, how old will she be now? Would she had a family? Would she had kids?
Years add up to decades. The murder of Teri Jo remains unsolved, but Detective Braddock never forgets his first homicide case.
I wanted to solve it, but life went on. I had a lot of other cases. We had homicides after that, that we were able to work. But anything I could do, I would do. We had a photograph of Teri Jo Bradish, a school photograph, I believe, supplied by the family. And we just made a poster and we put it all over anywhere we could think of. And I had one of those posters still on my wall.
Periodically, Braddock gets a call, but none of the leads pan out.
The case was always open.
In 2006, 2 decades after Teri Jo's death, Detective Braddock's phone rings.
Yes, Detective Braddock.
A prosecutor has a case with a possible connection to Teri Jo Bradish.
She was prosecuting a young man who would have been a young man about the time of Teresa's death.
This man fits the profile of someone who might have committed rape and murder. And in 1985, he lived near Teri Jo Bradish.
He was awaiting sentencing, and somehow word had got back to her that this person knew her or knew about her death.
Could he have been involved in Teri Jo's murder?
She wanted to know if this particular subject's name had ever come to light as part of her homicide investigation. And I told her no, it hadn't. And she asked about DNA, if we'd ever come up with any DNA.
DNA?
DNA profiling was virtually unknown at the time of Teri Jo's murder. The rape kit collected at her autopsy has never been tested, but the evidence still exists. Detective Braddock asks the crime lab to fast-track the results.
I'd been hoping we'd get something to clear it. Maybe this was our opportunity.
Several days later, he gets a call from the crime lab that sends the cold case into overdrive.
Got a profile match.
She says, we did develop a DNA profile from the vaginal samples of Teri Jo. I said, great, now we got maybe something. And then she asked a question that really kind of floored me, and that kicked the ball open big time. It went from a cold case to #1 on the whole department's list.
There's been a lot of scientific advancements since 1985. We're trying to incorporate them in everything we do. It's the DNA. There is, they can show where one person touches another one. We shake hands, and they're going to be able to find you. There's no doubt that you had handled her that day, that you had taken hold of her, and that you placed her there where we would be able to find her. There's just no way that you're going to explain around that one.
For the first time, 2 decades after the 1985 murder of 13-year-old Teri Jo Bradish, evidence is sent out for DNA testing, and the results blow the cold case wide open.
Hey, Karen, we got anything to work with?
Yeah, we sure do.
She wanted to know if we had any suspects, and I said, well, yeah, every male of this age, in Fremont County at the time of death because we just couldn't nail it down. And then she asked me the question that really opened things up. She says, was any of them a family member?
Like, there's a 99.8% chance that it's a family member.
Detective Braddock directs his attention to the man who was closest to the murdered girl at the time of her death, her father, Jerry Bradish.
I determined that he was now living down in Texas, and that's where we would have to go.
March 6, 2007, Detective Braddock flies to Texas. Working with a local Texas Ranger, he follows Jerry Bradish.
Our plan was if he discarded a Coke can or anything we might be able to get a DNA sample from, one of us would stay there and keep eyes on that to the exclusion of everything else. I mean, just stare it down, make sure nobody else got around it, and the other one of us would run down and try to scoop it up.
I got your back.
After a week of covert surveillance, Braddock strikes gold in a bag of trash outside Bradish's home.
Towards the bottom of that bag was a pair of leather work gloves. I bagged them as evidence and threw the rest of the stuff away and shipped it directly to the crime lab.
When the DNA comes back, it's a match for the DNA recovered from Teri Jo's rape kit. But it's not enough. The DNA match proves rape, but it doesn't prove murder.
I knew we had him on sexual assault. That doesn't mean a jury would find him guilty of the homicide.
It certainly made sense to all the investigators that Jerry Bradish probably murdered her as well. Problem is, 20-some years later, there would be no evidence that would support that theory, and theories are just that, theories.
It's gonna be tough with this.
There's what you think, there's what you know, and there's what you can prove.
The DNA evidence alone isn't enough for a murder conviction, but could it convince Jerry Bradish to confess? Detectives fly back to Texas for what could be their last chance at justice for Teri Jo.
We rented a motel room in Fort Worth and got it all set up with the camera, sound system. The prosecutors in the next room listening and watching. And we had the arrest team there in case things went south.
They contact Jerry Bradish with a story intended to put him at ease.
What we had decided on was that we were in the area working on another case. And as long as we were close, we wanted to talk to Jerry about his daughter and about her death, just in case after 20+ years he would remember something that we could jar loose.
Bradish agrees to meet them after work.
You want to just sit there, and I'll just sit over here. These rooms ain't got a heck of a lot of room in.
No, they're not.
Despite the high stakes, detectives start out with small talk.
We're trying to put him at ease, until we get ready to confront him. I said, I have to advise you of your rights, just like they do on TV. You okay with that?
You have the right to remain silent. Anything you say may be used against you in a court of law. You have the right to talk to a lawyer and to have a lawyer present while you are being questioned. I understand my rights and I'm willing to talk to you. How would you answer that?
Oh, yeah, okay.
And he agreed to waive him and talk to us. So we talked about everything but his daughter's homicide there for maybe an hour. And then I swung it around.
And this was the very first homicide that I'd ever been involved with. And here I am just about ready to retire, and I'd sure, this has always kind of bothered me, and I kind of I'd like to see it through, but...
We need to talk business, and we wanted that to be a pretty abrupt transition. It's kind of like a bomb you drop. And it's a shock factor. And you can see it immediately sobered him up.
Detectives have carefully planned a strategy to elicit a confession from Jerry Bradish.
What we were trying to do was get him to admit not that he killed her, not that he raped her, just that he was even there. And then once you get that first admission, then we can build on that and keep working up to where he gives us the full confession.
To get him talking, they start with a series of basic statements with which Jerry will easily agree.
I think where I first met you or saw you was actually at the funeral home that day that we found her. You were working in Riverton.
I was working in Riverton.
You could see he was very uncomfortable talking about it. And that was a good thing. That's exactly what we were after.
If I recall right from what I read on the reports and remembered back then, the night that Teri took off from the group home, she told the people there that she talked to you on the phone.
That's what I was told to.
Okay. And you didn't talk to her then?
I hadn't talked to her.
You hadn't talked to her for a couple months before?
Yeah, I hadn't talked to her.
We're turning up the heat at this point slowly a little bit more every time. Every question turns up the heat.
Of course, in 1985, we didn't understand a lot of things, so what I were doing as part of this is trying to go back and create what we can. We don't have Teri Jo, so I don't have any way of getting her sample, but I was wondering, you know what DNA is?
Even though detectives have DNA from the gloves in Bradish's garbage, they must be absolutely sure that the match will hold up in court.
The prosecutor, looking at ways to close any doors the defense attorney might have, requested that we get another DNA sample from the suspect.
So I was going to ask you and her mother, if I can find her, if you'd be willing to give us a DNA sample.
If Bradish catches on that he's a suspect, he could call for an attorney and shut down the interview cold.
Did I rush it? Did I go too far, too fast? Is there a better way I should have done that?
I was absolutely certain attorney was going to be the words that came out of his mouth.
We need the truth. It's time for the truth. You've been living with this for over 20 years. And I think it's time for you to tell us what happened the night Teri Jo died.
Detectives believe that Jerry Bradish raped and murdered his 13-year-old daughter, Teri Jo, 23 years earlier.
He really was never a suspect, or at least a serious suspect. So he had reason, really, in his mind, to be pretty confident that we had no idea that it was him.
To prove beyond a shadow of a doubt that Bradish sexually assaulted his teenage daughter before her murder, they ask him for a DNA sample.
My thinking at the time was we just convince him that this is something that everybody does nowadays. Why would an innocent person deny it,
It's as simple as I'll just, take a couple swabs and swab the inside of your cheek. Have you been drinking it?
Yeah, I've been sitting here all the time we've been talking, drinking it.
I'm going to take a break and just rinse your mouth out or something, but I don't think it will.
As long as you don't have a chew in or something, that won't matter.
No chew, okay. Well, say it's just a matter of getting a couple of, swabs here. Just Q-tips, let them feel them. Put a box together here.
You could see him staring at those boxes. He didn't want to look away from them. He's pretty worried. Even if you're getting stopped for traffic and you really didn't do anything wrong, you're saying, what the heck did I do? The anxiety level goes up pretty high. Sitting down in a motel room with two investigators, his anxiety level was probably about a 9 out of 10 already.
Let's just open up and I'm going to just put it on your cheek. Do that one. Let's do one more on the other side. Just appreciate this. easier.
I don't think he wanted to, but he didn't know how to get out of it gracefully without implicating himself, maybe.
With the DNA sample sealed, detectives move on to their next step, extracting a confession.
And the time to get down to the main issue had arrived.
There's been a lot of scientific advancements since 1985. We're trying to incorporate them in everything we do. It's the DNA. They can show where one person touches another one. We know, Jerry, scientific fact, beyond refute, that when we found your daughter, Teri Jo, there's no doubt that you had handled her that day, that you had taken hold of her, and that you placed her there where we would be able to find her. There's just no way that you're going to explain around that one.
Bradish doesn't respond.
That was a very critical time within the interview to slowly explain to him what was going on. The seed was planted in Jerry's mind that even if somebody just touches somebody now, we can tell.
Bradish has sworn that he hadn't seen his daughter for months before her death.
Well, it was time for the truth to start happening. That's when our confrontation started. I actually started accusing him of it.
We weren't there. You and Teri were. We don't know what happened prior to that, perhaps. But I know that you took a hold of your daughter and you placed her beside that road, her body.
I think he really felt backed in a corner there.
I don't know if I ought to keep going with this, really. I need to, don't get me wrong, I need to talk to my wife.
And I just kept saying that, we know you put her body there. Nobody else could have done it. You're the one that had to do it. That's right, isn't it? If we could just get him on that first little step over the edge and admit something, then we had it.
And this is your opportunity, sitting here, one man to another, to explain what happened. You placed her body there alongside the road, right? Yeah.
You don't know how bad I wanted to jump and go, yeah, when he said that. Glad I didn't, but I sure wanted to.
With this admission, cops have Jerry Bradish on a slippery slope. They already know from the DNA he raped his own daughter. Now he's admitting to moving her body. It's time to push for a full confession.
You just told me that you put your daughter's body alongside the road. Where were you at? Where were you going when you stopped alongside the road?
The thing of it is, I can keep talking here too. You guys are saying you got me hung. And I can keep talking here, and if you don't completely have me hung, I can hang myself.
He's asking himself, what do they really know? I think Bill and I did a real good job of keeping him in the dark there.
I'm pretty sure Jerry was thinking that the world was coming to an end. Trying to stay calm on the surface anyway, but yeah, I was sweating blood too.
There's absolutely no question that you're involved. The question we've got, was it an accident? What happened?
And we had to get him to the point where he believed that telling the whole truth would be in his best interest.
The challenge there was obviously to keep him talking. And he was about to shut down. There was no question he's about to shut down.
You need to tell your side of this story. It's better for you to tell your side of the story than some prosecutor telling your side of the story that you've never gotten a chance to tell.
Almost always people need to tell their side of the story. If somebody's going to tell that story, by God, it's got to be him. And so, hence the comment about a prosecutor telling a jury, and you'll just have to sit there and listen to it. He is so torn right now. What do they know? Am I gonna screw myself here if I keep talking?
You guys are saying you got me hung, and I can keep talking here, and if you don't completely have me hung, I can hang myself.
For 23 years, the killer of 13-year-old Teri Jo Bradish has eluded detectives.
But it was personal and has been personal for a long time. When there's a homicide, never give up on it. Never give up on it. The victim's dead. You can't help them anymore. But you can do something. You can bring justice to the person who committed the crime.
Jerry Bradish has admitted to dropping Teri Jo's body by the side of a road. Now detectives are pushing him to finally admit he murdered his own daughter.
Getting him to confess was the only way I could be assured that this probably wouldn't go to a trial where a jury would decide whether he's guilty or innocent of murder. He immediately started turning a bright red. Just like he was gonna go off, he was getting so mad.
Sensing the change in Bradish, Detective Braddock resets the question.
Let's back up and start at the evening that your daughter Teri Jo died.
Let's back up further than that. I was married to Teri. We was having problems with Teri Jo. She was in the home, and we was having financial problems also. Fighting, all kinds of stuff. Teri was at the home, I was at Riverton working, where I was at. I did call Teri. I tried to got her out of the home.
The hardest thing as an interviewer is understanding how important pauses are. To shut up and let it happen. When you hit the ball into their court sometimes, you gotta let them hit it back. You can't go over there and hit it for them.
Everything was done. I kicked myself, blessed my soul, cursed my soul. I give her the wine, got her enough snocker. At that time being, I knew she was having all kinds of trouble with boys. I had sex with her, try to make it look like somebody else did, for insurance money.
For insurance money? What? How much money?
There's a $10,000 insurance policy on it.
Jerry Bradish has just confessed to raping and murdering his 13-year-old daughter to get $10,000 in insurance money.
You had sex with her and killed her?
Yeah.
How did you strangle her?
Yeah.
How did you strangle her?
Back. It's around her neck.
After 23 years, detectives have finally learned the truth about what happened to Teri Jo.
Yeah, well, we had our confession.
His work had dropped off and there was a lot of expenses, and she was being a real problem. And in his mind, he decided the best thing he could do would be collect her life insurance.
On September 28, 1985, Jerry Bradish called his daughter at the group home and persuaded her to come out to see him.
He had bought some wine. He said that he got Teri Jo drunk. And after she got drunk, he got into the back seat with her.
Come on, girl, get in.
And you strangled Teri after you had sex with her?
So it would look like someone else did it, you said?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And put her, then dumped her out on the side of the road where she could be found, because I wanted the body found.
He wanted her found right away so that she could be given a funeral and he could collect the life insurance quicker.
There's a lot of evil in there. I believe that Jerry Bradish had been sexually abusing Teri Jo for a long time.
I didn't see any remorse in his voice. I didn't see it in his actions. In my opinion, the only remorse he had was finally getting caught.
I don't get paid to get mad, I get paid to get confessions.
For Teri Jo's family, her father's arrest is a shocking conclusion to decades of grief.
Sometimes I wish that, I don't know, we would have known what kind of person he was.
Jerry Bradish pleads guilty to first-degree murder and is sentenced to life in prison with added time for second-degree sexual assault against a minor.
There's just not really a day that goes by that I, don't think of her. I feel sad that she didn't get to grow up. For those who have known her, and for those who loved her, she's still very much a part of their life. And always will be.